we are reminded that perfection is never accomplished by the self. Rather, it comes at the moment of entrusting the self, with all its limitations left intact, to the measureless wisdom and compassion of the Tathagata. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandots. 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 That quote I just read is from Sensei Clark Strand, and I think it beautifully encapsulates our teaching of entrusting. I started thinking about this because shortly after the 16th World Buddhist Women's Convention, Reverend Kuwahara from the JSC and Berkeley Buddhist Temple resident minister reached out to me, as he did to several people. He had said that Reverend Iwagami, Governor General of the Nishi Honganji, requested a reporter from the Honganji Shinpo to extend his stay in the Bay Area to conduct interviews with BCA members so that the Honganji in Japan can have a better understanding of how BCA members enjoy and appreciate the teachings, and to see their perspective on the future of Shin. And so Reverend Kuwahara invited me to meet with Mr. Akihiko Nishitani one afternoon for tea and talk here in the social hall at BCSF. It wasn't that I felt I had anything to say necessarily, it's just that I didn't want to say no to Reverend Kyo. And because Mr. Nishitani does not speak English and I don't speak Japanese, Reverend Kuwahara kindly interpreted for the both of us, which allowed me the opportunity to write down his questions and notes on my answers. So here's just 5 that I think are interesting, kind of reflecting on what the Honganji is thinking about and looking at and interested in. So interview question number 1. What is the uniqueness of the Jodo Shinshu teaching? How do you value the teaching of Shinran Shonin? I replied that I especially appreciate the egalitarian aspect of the teaching, the all-inclusive, all-encompassing, non-discriminatory nature of the teachings. You don't need to be a scholar or a monastic or a priest to live the life of Nembutsu. Everyone receives the liberating light of wisdom and compassion. Amida's great compassionate vow is to liberate all beings, beginning with a foolish, self-centered person like myself, who struggles with the all too human limitations of attachment, aversion, and delusion. The light of compassion exposes both my foolishness, my Bonbu nature, while continuing to shine a light on the profound compassion that is always supporting me. Question number 2. It could be said that Jodo Shinshu has less attractive practices, such as meditation in Zen or the fire ritual in Shingon Buddhism. Jodo Shinshu rather has more of a tendency towards an internal faith or existential reflection. What do you think of this characterization of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism? And I replied that I see Shin as just one branch of a very large tree called Buddhism, and all the branches and twigs are expressing the same fundamental teaching, that of our precious impermanence and precious interconnectedness. It's just the practice or the expression of these teachings that differ. Having practiced Soto Zen and Tibetan Buddhism prior to meeting with Shin, I personally found that both Zen and Vajrayana do indeed also have a faith and surrender elements to their teaching. Faith and surrender are not just unique to Shin teaching. I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all or that Shin is perfect for everyone, but I do believe that Shin is right just for me. And that's why I'm in this tradition, and that's why I was ordained in this tradition. Question 3. Some say Jodo Shinshu is not Buddhism, maybe due to the structural similarity with Christianity, or maybe due to the faith-oriented character. What do you think of such a comment? I responded, I don't agree with the comparison. I think Jodo Shinshu is right in alignment with the historical Buddhist teachings. Shakyamuni Buddha said, "Formerly and now, I teach suffering and the end of suffering." Isn't that exactly what the Pure Land Sutras are teaching? And isn't that what Shinran taught as well? Isn't that the point of Buddhism, regardless of which school or tradition we belong to? For me personally, the strong emphasis on self-reflection in Shin, as modeled by Shinran, can really help me see reality of life as it is, helping me to see the foolish Bombu person that I am. And this awareness can't help but bring about a more meaningful, a more compassionate change in my perspective, which for me personally lessens the suffering. Question 4. How do you understand Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, especially the doctrinal teachings such as Other Power and Pure Land? What do you think of the emphasis of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism on the teaching of salvation rather than the teaching of awakening? And I answered that I personally don't like the use of the word salvation, so I don't use it in my teachings. At its root, salvation is a Christian word. And in the US, it's predominantly a Judeo-Christian society. I believe it's something like 76% of Americans identify some form of Christianity. So as not to confuse people here in the US, I prefer the word liberation, which I feel is more in alignment with the teachings. Other power is another way of saying that there is nothing to achieve. All we have to do is receive the light of immeasurable compassion. As far as the Pure Land, I see it as that which is outside my self-centered, self-cherishing existence. It's the boundless compassion supporting me always, even from before I was born. Question number 5. What do you think of the possibility of Jodo Shinshu in the US in the future? Can we go over the border, the barrier of Japanese American? And I replied that if we recognize that Shinran's teaching transcends cultural, socioeconomic, and language differences, then of course it can, and it does. But how do we honor the past and yet adapt to the present? The question isn't, can we go over the barrier, but rather, do our temples and do our BCA institution, do they really want to? And what would that look like? We ended up talking about an hour, but those were the heart of the questions. And 4 weeks after this interview, I had the opportunity to greet the Zen Monshu, the former Gomonshu, Urakata Otani and his wife to BCSF for a private, unofficial visit. They were here in the US to visit old friends and to see some of the temples that the former Gomonshu had visited in the past. And it was especially important to me once I actually realized who he was. Initially, when I heard Zen Monshu, I thought it was the head of the Zen tradition. And then I believe it was Reverend Kobata who explained that in this case, Zen means prior or former Monshu. So it was a former Gomonshu. And it was important for me to welcome him and extend hospitality because he welcomed me to the Honganji family by officiating my Tokudo ordination 8 years ago at our mother temple in Kyoto, Japan. And I also received my Homyo, my Dharma name, from him during an affirmation ceremony at the Honganji 4 years before that, so 12 years ago. I am constantly reminded of the interdependence, the causes and conditions of how and why I'm here. 2 weeks ago, I received a call from an SRO hotel here in the city. The director had said that they had recently lost 2 longtime residents and wanted to hold an interfaith service for them. I am so grateful to the staff, those bodhisattvas who believe in the dignity of honoring all life, even in death. I appreciate how the staff always offers a reception after each service I do, bringing cookies or donuts and tea and coffee for those that have attended, creating an inviting space to talk and share our stories, our humanity. I am constantly reminded of our interdependence. Several nights ago, Reverend Kobata, Kevin Yauza, and myself, we attended a vigil. It was the annual Homeless Persons Vigil for those who have died on our San Francisco streets during this past year. This candlelight ceremony was held outdoors in the UN Plaza, which is just off Market Street. There were 15 street counselors, ministers, and other volunteers who were chosen to read the names slowly, one after another. The ceremony included prayers from a variety of faith traditions, as well as song. And the hour-long vigil concluded with the readers burning their lists of names in a large metal fire pot. This year, the names went on and on. They amounted to 275 of our neighbors who have died on our San Francisco streets this past year. That's one person every night for over 9 months straight. I am constantly reminded of our interdependence. And I'm deeply grateful to the Bodhisattvas from San Francisco Night Ministry, Faithful Fools, Sky Watchers, Singers of the Streets, and the San Francisco Interfaith Council and its winter shelter, and to all those who serve those who, due to causes and conditions, find themselves living on our streets or in their cars this holiday season. Contemporary Dharma teacher Khandro Rinpoche once said, "Time does not wait for anyone. There is change in every moment. If in our short lives as human beings we are able to be of some benefit to someone, then that is the activity of an enlightened being." There are so many enlightened beings who have touched our life, and as such, there are so many reasons to say thank you. That's why the Shin teaching, the Nembutsu, resonates so deeply with me. We are constantly receiving the opportunity to see the boundless compassion, the boundless kindness that has and continues to support and sustain us in a myriad of ways. From the beginningless beginning, really. Namo Amida Butsu is at the same time an expression of our universal oneness and an expression of our gratitude for being touched by the great vow of compassion. Please join me in Gasho for the words of Shinran Shonin from Hymns of the Pure Land, Wasan, number 57, as he acknowledges and celebrates these precious opportunities before us. The light of the Buddha of unhindered light embodies the lights of purity, joy, and wisdom. Its virtue is inconceivable, benefiting all beings in the 10 quarters. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namondots. 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 Thank you. Yes, that's the Gomonchu and his wife who visited us last month. Yes, Sensei? And then that's the son who, if you went to the 16th World Buddhist Women's Convention, the son who is the current Gomonchu was there and offered words during our services. So now I'd like to invite Reverend Kobata to come forward and lead us in Vandana Tisarana, page 167 in the Purple Service Book.